Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host, Mitch. Glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today's episode is going to be a $50 deck tech. When I say $50, I mean that is an overall deck cost. Both shipping and commanders that are $10 or less are going to be included in that cost, but basic lands will not be. Decks on this channel are built to be fun, inexpensive, and focused. If you want to learn more about what a focused commander deck is, check out this video here. On this deck tech, I'm going to take you through its strategy, the tactics, and how this deck wins. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And while you're at it, subscribe and review our podcast as well. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCGplayer affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Today's episode comes to you courtesy of Eddles Spaghettles. Eddles has been supporting this channel as a general tier patron for over a year now. I truly couldn't do this without the support from amazing patrons like Eddles. And today, Eddles is going to handle the intro for me.
Hey Mitch, this is Eddles from Detroit, Michigan. For my deck tech, I think it would be interesting to see you build around Karona, the False God. With her more unique ability to bounce around combined with curses, control, and a bit of chaos, I believe she'll produce some interesting games.
So as Eddles said, today's deck tech is going to be built around Karona, False God. In our conversations, we talked about a control deck with curses, vows, and even a token finisher and all these crazy things happening. Karona False God is a 5/5 avatar with haste that costs 1 in Wooburg. She has at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player untaps Karona False God and gains control of it. And whenever Karona attacks, creatures with a creature type of your choice get +3/+3 until end of turn. So Karona's going to bounce around from player to player and pump the creature type of their choice. So we want to make sure that we don't play out Karona until it's advantageous to us. We're going to set up by protecting ourselves and incentivizing our opponents to attack each other. With Karona moving from player to player, things can get a bit chaotic. But if we can manage and control that chaos, we can win. When the time's right, we can cast one of multiple spells to create a ton of tokens and then take over the game. So what's our strategy with this deck? Well, we're going to control the board, curse our opponents, and creatures. Now, vows aren't really a curse, but they kind of are, so just bear with me. And then how do we win with this deck? Well, we're going to swing big with an army of pump tokens. Again, we've got multiple ways to create a huge amount of tokens, and then Karona can pump them for the win. As with all Commander's Quarters decks, I'm going to take you through 10 different tactics that show you how the deck works and how we're going to win with it. Let's start things off with tactic number 1, True Ramp. First up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble, which we can pay 2 and tap and sacrifice to get a base land into play tapped. Next up, we've got 3 ramp spells at 2 mana with Farseek, Rampant Growth, and Secure Tribe Elder. Farseek can get us a Plains, Island, Swamp, or Mountain into play tapped. And then both Rampant Growth and Secure Tribe Elder can get us any basic land into play tapped. Up next, we've got some enchantments that can help us out with Fauna Fertility, Fertile Ground, and Trace of Abundance. By paying 1 and a green, we can sacrifice Fauna Fertility to get a basic land into play tapped. And then both Fertile Ground and Trace of Abundance have, whenever enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds 1 mana of any color to their mana pool. And on top of that, Trace of Abundance gives that land Shroud too, so it's protected. Next up, we've got Search for Tomorrow, which can get us 1 basic into play untapped, and we can suspend 2 for a green. And then Cultivate's going to get us 1 basic into play tapped and 1 into our hand. Grow from the Ashes gets 1 basic into play untapped or 2 if we kicked it. And then we've got Circuitous Route and Explosive Vegetation, which get us 2 basics into play tapped. Now, because this is a 5-color deck, we really want to make sure that we can fix our mana, so we're also running Renegade Map and Armillary Sphere. Renegade Map comes into play tapped, and we can tap and sacrifice it to get 1 basic into our hand. And then we can pay 2 to tap and sacrifice our Armillary Sphere to get 2 of them into our hand. These cards might not ramp us, but they can help us fix our mana, which is crucial for this deck. After we've ramped though, what's next? Let's find out in tactic number 2, Sacred Vow. First up, there's Assault Suit, which is an equipment that says the equipped creature gets +2/+2, has haste, and can't attack you or a planeswalker you control, and can't be sacrificed. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you may have that player gain control of equipped creature until end of turn. If you do, untap it. So basically, once we decide to get Karona out, this can come in huge. If an opponent has a sacrifice outlet, they're no longer able to sacrifice Karona. Also, Karona can no longer attack us, which can come in handy too. And then we've got some vows that can help with that as well, with Vow of Wildness, Vow of Lightning, and Vow of Malice. Essentially, each of these auras give a buff, and they also don't allow that creature that they're enchanting to attack us. So we can use them on Karona when we need to, but we also can just use them on our opponent's most threatening creatures. We make those creatures even more threatening, and they can only swing at our opponents. Wildness gives +3/+3 in Trample, Lightning gives +2/+2 in First Strike, and Malice gives +2/+2 in Intimidate. Next up, we've got some more vows with Vow of Flight, Vow of Duty, and Spectral Grasp, which is pretty much a vow. Again, each of these make it so that the creature can't attack us or a planeswalker we control. Flight's going to give +2/+2 in Flying, Duty's going to give +2/+2 in Vigilance, and Spectral Grasp makes it so that the creature can also not block creatures we control. And finally, we've got 2 cards that kind of act as pseudo vows with Armadillo Cloak and Spirit Loop. Armadillo Cloak is going to get +2/+2 in trample, and whenever enchanted creature deals damage, we gain that much life. Spirit Loop also has that same text, and whenever Spirit Loop is put into a graveyard from play, we return Spirit Loop to its owner's hand. So essentially, this is the old and kind of wonky way that lifelink was handled. Instead of the owner of the creature gaining life, the owner of the enchantment gains the life. So even if someone hits us with their creature, this basically cancels that damage out. And on top of that, if that creature hits someone else or something else, we gain that life too. But outside these auras, we've got other ways to protect ourselves too and incentivize opponents to go somewhere else. Let's go over those ways now in tactic number 3, turn aside. First up, there's Chronomantic Escape, which says until your next turn, creatures can't attack you. Remove Chronomantic Escape from the game with 3 time counters on it, and it's got to spend 3 for 2 and a white. So basically, every 3 turns, we're not going to be able to get attacked as long as we keep casting this. It might seem like somewhat of a small effect, but it can really come in handy in a lot of situations. And then as Teferi's Moat enters the battlefield, you choose a color, and creatures of the chosen color without flying can't attack you. Sandworm Convergence takes us a step further by just saying creatures with flying can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. It also says at the beginning of your end step, create a 5/5 green worm creature token. So over multiple turns, this can create an unstoppable army of worms that we can also pump with our commander. Next up, there's War Tax, which has pay X and a blue. Creatures can't attack this turn unless their controller pays X for each attacking creature. So if we know that someone's going to come at us, we can make them pay for it. And then Ghostly Prison has an effect that we don't have to keep paying for. It says creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each creature they control that's attacking you. Now these are all great cards at deterring attacks, but there's one that stands above the rest. And that would be the golden pick of this deck, which is the number 1 card out of our 99. And the golden pick for this deck is Fear of Safety. It's an enchantment for 4 and a white, and it says creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays X for each of those creatures, where X is the number of enchantments you control. As you've already seen, we're running a ton of enchantments in this deck. So essentially, once this is in play, it's going to be very hard for our opponents to pay to attack us with anything. So once we've got our commander out, if they want to still take advantage of that pump effect, they're going to have to swing elsewhere. This is a fantastic way for us to deter opponents from attacking us, and therefore they might go somewhere else when they're attacking. Again, at a certain point, if they don't deal with this, it's going to be pretty much impossible for them to attack us. And that's what makes this the Golden Pig. But we've got some other ways too to encourage our opponents to attack each other. So now let's move on to tactic number 4, a curse upon you. First up, we've got Curse of Bounty and Curse of Verbosity. These types of curses encourage our opponents to attack each other because they get a benefit from that. Curse of Bounty says whenever enchanted player is attacked, untap all non-land permanents you control. Each opponent attacking that player untaps all non-land permanents they control. And then Curse of Verbosity says whenever enchanted player is attacked, draw a card. Each opponent attacking that player does the same. So essentially these can put a target on one of our opponent's backs, and they benefit the attacker as well as us. Some other curses that we're running can also benefit the attacker, but they don't benefit us, but are still effective at pointing our opponents in the right direction for their attacks. And those curses would be Curse of Chaos, Curse of Predation, and Curse of Shallow Graves. Curse of Chaos says whenever a player attacks enchanted player with 1 or more creatures, that attacking player may discard a card. If the player does, he or she draws a card. Curse of Predation says whenever a creature attacks enchanted player, put a ++1 counter on it. And Curse of Shallow Grave says whenever a player attacks enchanted player with 1 or more creatures, that attacking player may put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield tapped. Again, although we might not get a benefit from these, they still incentivize our opponents to attack each other. But what are some other ways that we can further incentivize attacks? Let's go over them now in tactic number 5, a little push. First up, there's Bloodthirsty Blade, which says equipped creature gets +2/+0 and is goaded. And we can pay 1 to attach it to a creature an opponent controls at sorcery speed. So this is somewhat like a vow that forces that creature to attack someone else. Next up, there's Angel's Trumpet, which says all creatures have vigilance, and at the beginning of each player's end step, tap all untapped creatures that player controls that didn't attack this turn. Angel's Trumpet deals damage to that player equal to the number of creatures tapped this way. So essentially this gives players a choice. Either attack and don't take any damage, or don't attack and take quite a bit of damage depending on the number of creatures they have. Now obviously we're going to want to wait until we're actually set up to actually play this card, because if we're not protected, people are just going to send their creatures our way. But another card that we can use in an interesting political way though is War Cadence. It has pay X and a red. This turn, creatures can't block unless their controller pays X for each blocking creature they control. So it's kind of like a reverse War Tax. Basically with this though, we can make deals to help our opponents get creatures through on each other. It can also be a fantastic way to finish our opponents off once we've got our giant token army. But we also need some spells that can help us out in different ways as well. So let's go over those now in tactic number 6, Utility Belt. First up, there's Flicker Form, which is an aura that has pay 2 white, exile enchanted creature and all auras attached to it. At the beginning of the next end step, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. If you do, return the other cards exiled this way to the battlefield under its owner's control attached to that creature. So this is a flexible card that can help us out in multiple ways, but most of the time we just want to put it on Karona. We don't get to pick and choose the players that Karona goes to, she goes to them all. We can essentially use this to remove that benefit that she's going to give them though when they attack. If we know that her pumping their creatures isn't going to be beneficial to us, we can just get rid of her temporarily. This can also just be a good way to protect Karona from wraths or target removal too. And then Aethergil is another flexible card in this deck. It says return 6 target non-land permanents to their owner's hands. So we can use this in a political way to incentivize players to do what we want. We can make a deal and not bounce anything from one player and then bounce another player's creatures so that they're wide open. That player can then pump their army with Karona and swing through for a ton. This can also be used to bounce Karona back to our hand if she's not going to be helping us out at the time. If we're no longer protected, we don't want our opponent's army to be able to swing big at us with her effect. But how do we actually get to all these great cards? Let's find out now in tactic number 7, Godly Gifts. First up, we've got 3 cards that benefit us from our opponents attacking with a lot of creatures. Barring 100,000 Arrows and Theft of Dreams do the exact same thing. They say draw a card for each tapped creature target opponent controls. And then Keep Watch as an instant says draw a card for each attacking creature. So we can actually use this with our token army to draw a ton of cards as well. Another great draw spell is Fact or Fiction, which says reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles, put one pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. And then Epiphany the Drownyard is basically an X version of Fact or Fiction, but our opponent chooses the pile. Next up, there's Kamena's Awakening, which has Ascend, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws a card. If you have the City's Blessing, instead only you draw a card. And then we're running some Enchantresses with Mesa Enchantress, Satyr Enchanter, and Eidolon of Blossoms. Mesa Enchantress and Satyr Enchanter say whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. And then Eidolon of Blossoms has Consolation. Whenever Eidolon of Blossoms or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Again, we're running a ton of enchantments in this deck, so each of these can draw us a lot of cards if they stay in play. And finally, we're going to be running Diabolic Tutor, which says search your library for a card and put that card into your hand, then shuffle your library. Sometimes we just need a specific card, and this can be the perfect way to get it. But there's also some times when we actually just need to get cards back. So now it's time for us to move on to tactic number 8, Remember When. First up, there's Reap the Past, which says return X cards at random from your graveyard to your hand, exile Reap the Past. And then Wildest Dreams just says return X target cards from your graveyard to your hand, exile Wildest Dreams. Wildest Dreams does cost XX and a green, but it does let us pick and choose those cards. And finally, there's Creeping Renaissance, which says choose a permanent type, return all cards of the chosen type from your graveyard to your hand, and it's got flashback for 5 green. If our opponents deal with a lot of our enchantments, we've got a ton of ways to get them back. Now, we've talked about getting our own things back, but how do we actually deal with our opponents' things? Let's find out in tactic number 9, No More Toys. First up, there's Return to Nature, which says choose 1, destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, or exile target card from a graveyard. And then Crush Contraband says choose 1 or both, exile target artifact, or exile target enchantment. And then Oblation can pretty much deal with anything. It says the owner of target non-land permanent shuffles it into their library, then draws 2 cards. This is a very flexible card since we can actually target our own non-land permanent if we need to draw those cards. Now, we've mentioned it a couple times, but how do we actually finish our opponents off? Let's find out in our final tactic, tactic number 10, it's token time. First up, there's White Sun Zenith, which says create X22 white cat creature tokens and shuffle White Sun Zenith into its owner's library. And then Decree of Justice says create X44 white angel creature tokens with flying. It also has cycling for 2 and a white, and whenever you cycle Decree of Justice, you may pay X. If you do, create X11 white soldier creature tokens. Usually this is the better route since we can cycle at instant speed, and it costs a lot less to get a lot more creatures. Next up, there's Supply and Demand, and Supply says put X11 green sapling creature tokens into play. Demand can also be useful though. It says search your library for a multicolor card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. And then there's Flurry of Wings, which says put X11 white bird soldier creature tokens with flying into play, where X is the number of attacking creatures. So when one of our opponents is swinging out with a lot of creatures, we can use this to get our own army of birds. Next up, there's Deploy to the Front, which says put X11 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield, where X is the number of creatures on the battlefield. But Stormherd perhaps can make even more tokens because it says create X11 white Pegasus creature tokens with flying, where X is your life total. And finally, we've got a way to make creature tokens over time with Sigil the Empty Throne. It says whenever you cast an enchantment spell, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying. Again, once we're set up and we've got our army of tokens, we can swing out with our commander and pump them all and then win. Keep in mind that you do have to choose a creature type, so make sure you pick the creature type that's most beneficial to your team. Another huge thanks to Endels for supporting this channel and for picking Karona. It was a lot of fun to build around. If you want to support this channel or want your own deck dedicated to you, consider becoming a patron. But now that we've gone through the spells in this deck, let's go on to the mana base. First up, there's Command Tower, which can tap for any color, and Exotic Orchard, which can tap for any color most of the time. And then we've got Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, both of which we can tap and sacrifice to get a base land and play tapped, and Warp Landscape can do the same if we pay 2 and tap and sacrifice it instead. Next up, we're running 3 of the Panoramas with Bant, Naya, and Jund. And then there's Ash Barrens, which has basic land cycling for 1. Next up, we've got 3 lands that can go search for 2 lands with Mirrored Landscape, Crozen Verge, and Blighted Woodland. Finally, we're running 25 basic lands. 9 of those are going to be a forest, 7 will be a plains, 5 will be an island, 2 will be a swamp, and 2 will be a mountain. And now that we've gone through every single card in this deck, let's do a quick price check. A quick reminder that our deck costs are calculated using TCGplayer optimization, optimizing with even heavily played and damaged cards because those cards need a home too. The average Karona EDH rec deck will set you back $583.14. Our deck is going to be much more affordable, coming in at $49.25. Again, the price of this deck is the price that I got for it on the day that I'm recording. If you want to see a breakdown of this deck's cost, check out the link in the description. Keep in mind that prices can and will fluctuate and change over time. But with these deck costs, I want to be as transparent as I possibly can. Again, Commander's Quarters decks are built to be tuned and focused within their budget, but there are always ways that we can improve on them. So let's go through some reasonable upgrades now to see what some of those ways just might be. First up, let's add in Propaganda by taking out Teferi's Moat. Next up, let's add in Island Sanctuary by taking out War Tax. And then let's add in Curse of Opulence by taking out Curse of Predation. And then let's add in Bite of Thassa by taking out Epiphany of the Drowned Yard. Next up, let's add in March of the Multitudes by taking out White Sun Zenith. And finally, let's add in Secure the Waste by taking out Supply and Demand. And now it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what you think about this deck and what you think about the commander in general. And make sure you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons who help make this show possible. I truly couldn't do any of this without your support. If you want to support this channel directly, consider becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, including being able to vote on future commanders for deck techs. There are even tiers where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. You can check out all the Patreon tiers and rewards at patreon.com/commandersquarters. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.